Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 15, entitled Parasuram, the Lord's Warrior Incarnation. Text 16 through 21. In text 16, the great king Parikshit is inquiring from Shukadev Goswami. The Goswami has, just before these verses, explained that Parasuram, who was a Brahman, was an incarnation of the Supreme Lord, Vishnu, was very dissatisfied with the Kshatriyas, the warrior class, because of their false pride, due to their strength, their wealth, their influence over others. And he annihilated 21 generations. Parikshit is asking, why? If we look personally into this verse, Parikshit Maharaj was also a great king. And he was also, due to a mistake, cursed to die by a Brahmin. Traditionally, Brahmins are the gurus. They are saintly. They are giving nourishment of spiritual knowledge and example to the people in general. And one of the foremost duties of the Kshatriyas, or those with political power, is to protect the Brahmins, protect the cows, protect the women, protect the old, protect the children. Because without such protection, the entire society becomes degraded. When there is exploitation of these innocent sectors of society, then the karma of the whole society becomes disastrous. We have read how Parikshit Maharaj, he was on an excursion in the forest. He happened to come to the ashram of Samik Rishi, and something happened to him that never ever happened before. He became so inundated by thirst. He went to the ashram of the Rishi and asked for some water. But the Rishi was in such deep trance of meditation, he did not even acknowledge the external world. He didn't know that the king had come. Now obviously King Parikshit had been thirsty before, but because he was a Rajarshi, a saintly king, whatever the conditions of his body in this world around him, he never lost his soberness. He always behaved properly. This is the quality of a great soul. Srila Prabhupada writes in the Krishna book that the greatness of a person has to be evaluated by how that person is able to tolerate provoking situations. It's very rare to be saintly in one's behavior when things are going really nice in Kali Yuga. But it's quite possible. But the test of how deep our realization and our sincerity is provoking situations, temptations of lust, provocative situations that can make one very angry, envious, greedy. When these obstacles come on our path, if we resist with integrity, not only do we gain great strength and the grace of God, but they also exhibit the quality of our sincerity. Now, King Parikshit, he was a saint. Why did he become so disturbed when he was thirsty? It was totally out of his character. Because the Lord, knowing him to be such an intimate devotee, had something that he wanted to do through him. Krishna was staging through this incident the most exciting, dynamic episode in which the Srimad Bhagavatam could be spoken. In such a way that it would have a tremendous impact in the heart of all people for all time to come. And he also wanted to teach a lesson, many lessons on many levels. From a very external point of view, Krishna wanted to teach whoever you are, however great you are, even if you're the king of the entire planet, you are responsible for your activities. And if you mistreat someone, you have to pay the consequence. Whether you're a husband mistreating your wife, or a wife mistreating her husband, or a parent mistreating children, or an employer mistreating an employee, or a politician mistreating those under them. Whoever you are, if you're a guru mistreating your disciple, or a disciple mistreating your guru, trying to keep things balanced, or the king mistreating anyone, even an animal, you're responsible. Because the tendency in this world is when we take a certain position of authority, we become blinded by that authority and we think we can do whatever we like. But the reality is, you cannot. If anyone mistreats anyone, there is a consequence. No one is exempt. Very graphic illustration. King Parikshit was disturbed by this Brahmin, this sage. The king comes into his house, and because he's such a great Brahmin, he's become so proud. He's sitting there, he doesn't even give me a reception, doesn't even acknowledge my existence. I'm thirsty for water, doesn't give me a drop of water. He did something very minor. He happened to see a dead serpent laying on the ground. And with the end of his bow, he lifted it and put it like a garland, a mala, over the neck of the sage. It's not so bad. It's not good. If it was a live snake, it would be really bad. And Samik Rishi came out of his meditation. The king was already gone, and he happened to see the snake around his neck, and he couldn't care less. It meant nothing for him. He wasn't insulted. It's not that he became venomous like the snake. Who has done this? I will destroy them. Who has humiliated my distinction by putting a snake on me? He just took the snake. Who cares? Doesn't matter. He was a great sage. But his son, Shringi, He had the powers of a Brahmin, but he didn't have the maturity. To have position and power without maturity and realization could be very dangerous. That is a great lesson learned here. And in our life, if we're being put in a position of power as a parent, as a leader, a spiritual leader, social leader, whatever it may be, without maturity and realization, we could create disaster. Samik Rishi was so mature, didn't matter. Who cares? Just tossed it off and went back into his meditation. But Shringi, when he heard this happen to his father, he cursed King Parikshit to die in 7 days by the bite of a snake. What goes around comes around. You're playing with snakes? Well, you're going to die by a snake. Not an ordinary snake either. Now Parikshit heard this, and he had no fear, and he had no anxiety. He felt nothing bad toward Shringi. He understood, I did something wrong, I'm responsible. This is an opportunity to fix my mind for the next 7 days on Krishna. So he went to the bank of the Ganges, and there Sukadev Goswami came with all the other sages of the world to help him remember Krishna by speaking Srimad Bhagavatam. And here in the 9th canto, which is several days, hearing, he's being told that Parasuram, who was a Brahmin, annihilated not only one king, but 21 generations of kings all over the world. So this must have been really interesting to King Parikshit, because he was just annihilated by a Brahmin too when he was a king. But he saw it as Krishna. But in this case, the Brahmin himself was Krishna, Parasuram. So he's asking, what was the offense? I put a snake on somebody, but what was this person's offense? And we're hearing about the offense in these verses. Kartavirya Arjuna, who was a great king of the Haihaya dynasty, very powerful man. He performed tapasya, and his guru was an incarnation of the Lord, Dattatreya, the son of Atri Muni. He appeared in Chitrakoot, on the banks of the Mandakini Ganga, to Anasuya, the most chaste of all women. So here is Kartavirya Arjuna taking guidance and receiving blessings from an avatar, Dattatreya. And what benediction did he want? He wanted 1,000 arms so that no one could defeat him. And he was blessed with that. He was so powerful. He conquered all directions, amassed tremendous wealth, power, fame, everything a materialistic person wants. He had it all. And because he had all of that, he was surrounded by the most beautiful women in the world who were willing to do anything for him. He was traveling around, and he came, and we're reading today how a person very similar to Kartavirya Arjuna, his name was Ravana. Yes? They were contemporaries. Because we read in Ramayana that Parasuram met Ram after he broke the bow of Shiva. And so here we read about Parasuram's meeting with Ram. Now we're reading about Ravana's meeting with Kartavirya Arjuna, who met with Parasuram. So Ravana was out conquering all directions too. And he decided with his armies and whoever else he was with, his ladies, they decided to take a nice little holiday on the banks of the Narmada River and take their bath. And then Ravana, who was a devotee of Shiva, he had his Shiva Lingam and set up the Shiva Lingam on the banks of the Narmada River to perform his puja. And as he was doing his puja, all of a sudden, the river flooded over, it was swelling higher and higher and higher, and it was flooding over the Shiva Lingam, and all of the puja paraphernalia was floating around, and the flowers were floating around, and Ravana was outraged. What's happened? Somebody's doing this. And he sent some of his soldiers, find out what's going on. And they went upstream, and they saw Kartavirya Arjuna just to show off to his girlfriends. With his arms, he made a dam that blocked the whole river. Not a drop can get through. And therefore, the whole river was backing up, and flooded Ravana's place. And for he wasn't doing it purposely to disturb Ravana. He was just doing it just to show off his powers. But Ravana could not tolerate anybody disturbing him. So he attacked Kartavirya Arjuna. It was a great fight. The Puranas describe this battle. They were fighting and fighting and fighting. And ultimately, Kartavirya Arjuna, with his club, smashed Ravana in the head. Ravana fell to the ground. Kartavirya Arjuna tied him up with chains and ropes, brought him back to his capital of Mahishpati, and put him in prison. As explained here, he tied him up like a monkey. Now, Ravana didn't like to be treated like a monkey, but that's what he deserved. So here he was in prison, according to the Brahmanda Purana, for 1 year. And then the grandfather of Ravana, Pulastya Muni, he came to Kartavirya Arjuna, and Kartavirya Arjuna, because they know if they please great saints, he got his powers by pleasing Dattatreya. So he honored and worshipped Pulastya Muni. You see, these kinds of people, they'll worship and honor and offer prayers to sages and Brahmins as long as they get what they want from them. But if they don't, they become the enemies. So Pulastya Muni said, give me my grandson, free him. And like a monkey, he went down into this prison and untied him and said, get out. But from that day on, Ravana and Kartavirya Arjuna became good friends. Whatever that means. They knew how to deal with each other, to exploit each other through their friendship. They were allies. So Shukadeva Goswami just wanted to show how strong and influential Kartavirya Arjuna was. Should I tell the story? Thank you. So one day Kartavirya Arjuna with his armies were traveling around, just seeing how the kingdom was. And they came to the ashram of Jamadagni. Jamadagni was a great Brahmin and a great sage, very genuine. He had no material possessions. He lived in the forest in a little hut with his wife, Renuka, and just did meditation, and did yajna, did puja for the welfare of all of society. He had several sons. The youngest of his son was named Rama, who later became known as Parasa Rama, for obvious purposes. So, Jamadagni was living a very simple life with his family, just studying Vedas, teaching Vedas, engrossed in yoga meditation and performing sacrifices, not for himself, but for the whole world. When Kartavirya came with an army of his soldiers, ministers, and well-wishers, Jamadagni was such a good host. He welcomed the king and wanted to give a feast for all of the king and all of his soldiers. Within a matter of minutes, in the middle of the forest, obviously they didn't have stoves like Gauranga Prabhu and his team did during the South Indian Yatra. We know how long it took for them, the buses, to bring the pots and to dig the trenches, to make the fires, get the fuel. It took tremendous, it took weeks and weeks of preparation. Well, he's just living in the forest. And Renuka is just cooking for, a few children and her husband on one little fire. And here there were tens and thousands of soldiers, and soldiers eat a lot. I don't know if they eat as much as brahmacharis. But they do eat a lot. Because, brahmacharis, this prasad's very important to them. They don't have anything else. They have the holy name and prasad. So within minutes, there was an incredible feast of dozens and dozens of preparations, and each one was soaked in the most aromatic, delicious, fresh ghee. They were really happy. All the soldiers and the king, they were eating and eating and eating. However much they ate, Jamadagni kept giving them more and more and more and more. Such beautiful hospitality. Gave them gifts, so many things. Because he wanted to serve. Jamadagni just wanted to serve according to his capacity. Now a humble person is grateful to anyone who does something for them. But a proud person, one who is infatuated by the false ego, is unable to really be grateful. They want for themselves. So Kartavirya asked, how is it possible that Jamadagni Maharaj cooked this incredible feast for us in a matter of minutes and he didn't know we were coming? And he was told by his minister that Kartavirya has a cow that is a descendant of the Surabhis, a Kamadhenu cow. And with this Kamadhenu cow, he's getting ghee specifically for the purpose of performing yajna, for the pleasure of God and for the spiritual well-being of all living beings. And this cow is such a supernatural, powerful cow that whatever you desire from her, she can give you. He just told the cow, provide a feast, and instantly the feast was made. Kartavirya Arjuna, Srila Prabhupada writes, he was puffed up, proud by his power, his influence, his knowledge, his beauty. And not only that, he was a great yogi from a material perspective. It tells us in the pages of the Bhagavatam that he had mastered the 8 mystic cities, Anima, Lagima, Prapti. He could perform supernatural feats. If he was sitting in this temple room and he desired an apple from Kulu Valley in the Himalayas, within seconds, Prapti city, he could materialize it. Not to speak of powers, he could conquer worlds. So yes, he had incredible knowledge. He had perfected the yogic siddhis. He had unbelievable wealth. He was beautiful. He had hundreds of millions of people who would do anything he said without question. And he was proud. False pride destroys all one's good qualities in the eyes of God. So instead of being grateful to Jamadagni for doing this wonderful service for him and all of his people, he became envious. He decided, I must have that cow for myself. Meanwhile, the youngest son of Jamadagni, Parasaram, was out doing some seva. And at that time, Kartavirya Arjuna and his people, they forcibly stole the Kamadhenu cow. And Jamadagni could do nothing about it. And the cow, she loved her master. She loved Jamadagni because he protected her, he cared for her, he loved her, and she loved him. It was reciprocal. And when she understood, this cow, Kamadhenu, knew that he was honoring her, respecting her, and protecting her to use the resources of what she provided for the welfare of everyone. And she understood that this Kartavirya Arjuna was going to steal her and force her to give what she could give for his own nefarious, envious purposes. One was selfless service and the other was selfish ego. And Kamadhenu could not tolerate the idea that she was going to be exploited rather than protected. That what she was giving was, instead of being for the good of everyone, was going to just be to satisfy the passion of one man. She was crying. She was screaming out, help, help. And they stole her calf with her. Kartavirya Arjuna and his soldiers took her right away with her calf and brought to their capital. Rama returned home and heard what happened. He was very, very disturbed. This cannot be. Now, he was just living as a Brahmin with his father. But he decided, according to time, place, and circumstance, we have to do the needful. So he was just wearing a black deerskin. He had matted hair. He was a sadhu. But he picked up some shields and some bows and arrows and a parasa, a chopper. And he came running out and went to the capital of Mahismati. And there he roared to Kartavirya, return my father's Kamadhenu cow and her calf, and we will be friends. Otherwise, you will see my wrath. Our lives are ruined. Lord Chaitanya taught amanina manadena. The real quality of a good person is that they offer all respect to others and they don't expect respect for themselves. Trinadapi sunichena taror api sihishnana. To be humble like a blade of grass and tolerant like a tree. This was the downfall of this great king. He sent his soldiers out to kill Parasaram because he wasn't going to part with that cow. And there were hundreds and thousands of soldiers attacking one man. And Parasaram he began to show his prowess. It describes in the Srimad Bhagavatam that he was fighting with the speed of the mind. We all know the speed of the mind to some extent. Yes, just like if I just came from Mayapur. If I think of Mayapur, I'm in Mayapur in my mind. That's how fast. Yes, if you look at the moon and just think, I want to be on the moon, then in your mind you're on the moon. That fast. That's the speed of mind. And he was fighting for hours with the speed of mind, and then he got tired and slowed down to the speed of wind. Not an ocean breeze, but a cyclone, a hurricane wind. And he destroyed the entire army. And Kartavirya Arjuna was enraged, and he came out himself with all of his powers and all of his weapons on his chariot. And Parasaram, with his chopper, took off all of his hands, his arms, and then his head. And he collected the Kamadhenu cow and her calf and brought them back to his father. And told his father, this is what happened. Jamadagni was not happy at all. Rather, he said to Parasaram, my dear son, you have unnecessarily killed a king who has such an important position for the citizens of the world. Thus you have committed a great sin. And he said, my dear son, we are all Brahmins and have become worshipable for the people in general because of our quality of forgiveness. It is because of this quality of forgiveness that Lord Brahma, the supreme spiritual master of the universe, has achieved his post. The duty of a Brahmin is to cultivate the quality of forgiveness, which is illuminating like the sun. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is pleased with those who are forgiving. These words have been reverberating in the hearts of devotees for thousands and thousands of years. Srila Prabhupada quotes Chanakya Pandit that different types of living beings are considered beautiful because of particular qualities. The cuckoo bird is just a little black bird. It's not a very pretty bird, but is considered beautiful because of the song that the cuckoo sings. And even a very physically ugly person is considered beautiful if they're knowledgeable. A lady's quality is very beautiful by her chastity. And a Brahman's quality that makes a Brahman beautiful is forgiveness. It's one of the most powerful attributes that can change the world. And we see this consistent as a universal principle in all the great spiritual paths throughout history. In the Christian religion, Lord Jesus, he was asked by one of his disciples, according to the scripture, if someone offends us 7 times, we're supposed to forgive them. What do you say? He said, if someone offends you 70 times, 7 times, you must still forgive them. And he not only spoke it, but he practiced it. When he was hanging from the crucifix, after being beaten, lashed with whips, put thorn crown on his head, nailed to a cross through his hands and his feet, humiliated with harsh words, he prayed, God, please forgive them. They know not what they do. And in our Vaishnava culture, we find so many examples. Thakur Haridas, he was beaten, whipped, blasphemed, spit on, dragged by his hair through 22 marketplaces with the intent to kill him. And the whole time, he was not praying to God, save me. He was not praying to God, punish them. He was praying to Krishna, forgive them. Give them pure love of God. Whatever's happening to me is not important. If I've ever done anything good for you in my life, let all the credits that I've assumed, let it all go to forgiving them and giving them your love. That was his prayer as he was being beaten in the most harsh and cruel and violent way. Srila Prabhupada, he was willing to forgive us for everything and anything if we just opened our hearts to receive Krishna's grace coming through him. Nityananda Prabhu, Madhai tried to murder him by smashing his head, making him bleed. But he only prayed to Lord Chaitanya, forgive them. Give them your kindness. And when we read these things consistently, Prahlad, even though his father did the most horrible things to him, he always was forgiving him. And Dhruva, after he became Krishna conscious, he forgave all the trespasses. Ambarish Maharaj was praying for the forgiveness of Durvas Muni. Again and again. Why? It's not just entertainment. When something is repeatedly emphasized in the scriptures, in all scriptures, it means it's a prominent, important quality that we must cultivate individually, personally, ourselves, if we want to be dear to the Lord. Jamadagni is saying here, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pleased with those who are forgiving. Athapumbir dvijastrestas Radhanath-Swami-Media shvanushtatasya dharmasya samsadir haritoshanam. That the supreme perfection of whatever our varna, our ashram, our occupation, whatever we do in this world, its success is to the degree that we please Krishna. And Krishna is most pleased by forgiveness because it's a quality of love. It's a quality of compassion. But here we're finding a very interesting balance, because Parasaram was the Lord himself. And he wasn't so forgiving to Kartaviri Arjuna. He was taking action against injustice. This mother cow was being offended, and he wasn't going to allow it to happen. So on one side, he took action against injustice to protect the innocent, and on the other hand, he's being preached to about forgiveness. Does that sound confusing? It is. Unless we have the maturity to understand what's happening here. And Srila Prabhupada, through his purports, is explaining. We should have a forgiving heart, but at the same time, we have to have the maturity and the understanding to stop injustices. But not with a vengeful heart. But with a clean heart. Punishment is not for punishment's sake. Punishment is to protect the society when that has to be done. But the preference is always to forgive. So to make this clear, Jamadagni told Parasaram that because you made this sin of not forgiving them, now you must worship the Supreme Lord by going to all the holy places. And Parasaram accepted it. He didn't argue with his father. He didn't start giving logical explanations of why it was justified. He understood. I did wrong. I could have got the cow back by other means. You know, he could have said that. So he went out on pilgrimage to purify himself. Which is another great lesson. However great we are, if we do wrong, we have to rectify ourselves. In other words, we have to take serious responsibility for what we do and what we say in our life. And no one is exempt from that. And the higher our position, the higher our realization spiritually, the more we have to take responsibility. Not the opposite. Not now that I have this position, I don't have to worry about these things. You're more responsible. So Parasaram went on pilgrimage. And what's about to happen, you will hear in the future classes of Srimad Bhagavatam. I don't want to go beyond this part of the story, but it's very tempting to do so. Because it is really incredible what's about to happen.